Okay, so tonight I saw the show Bad News by the local group Chaos Ensemble. This show describes itself as whatever events are popular in the last day, week, or month before the performance will be poked, prodded, and torn to shreds in a 40-minute broadcast where anything can happen. Well, what happened is I saw 5 people go on stage and proceed to hose that stage down with piss, experiencing untold amounts of splashback. That is, of course, a metaphor, and a pretty poor one, since I would have actually enjoyed seeing a 5-way golden shower more than the shit that was delivered. It really was desperately unfunny, to the point of being physically painful to watch. Now, if you want to get an idea of what this show was like without subjecting yourself to the horror of going to it, imagine the later years of Good News Week, stripped of the infinitely minute residue of humour it contained, and then fill that gaping comedy hole with clumsy improvisation, audience involvement verging on the belligerent, and a complete absence of stage presence or charisma. Now look, I don't want to be too harsh, I'm a pretty tolerant guy, so for a show to evoke this sort of response in me should tell you something. And that something is to stay the hell away from it. The rot really started when the venue crew quite aggressively ordered everyone to fill up the front rows first. Now, this isn't unusual if the show's got low ticket sales, and, I'll play along. No one wants to be that performer who has to perform to a scattering of people amongst dozens of empty rows. That's shit. But this show turned out to be a sellout. Obviously, because it was $5 rush ticks, I can't imagine anyone wanting to spend more than $5 on the crap that they saw tonight. So there really was absolutely no reason to dictate to people where they had to sit. The MC was already on stage when we arrived, and what I expected was a little bit of chit-chat, as many other performers do. They sort of warm up their own crowd. We see a lot of performers do that, and it forms that connection, and that's what performing is about. It's about creating a connection with your audience. But no, he just sort of bobbed and jiggled around to the warm-up music, preening himself occasionally as he leered at the audience who was shuffling in, accompanied by the constant haranguing of the venue crew, demanding that people fill up the front of the seating first. Now, once it had started, I honestly gave it a shot. I wanted desperately to like this show. But as you can have guessed, I really didn't like it. The audience participation was, as I said, clumsy. It was just poorly done. Audience participation is so important, and if a show does it well, and we've seen a few examples of this in these Fringe reviews, it's great. It actually lends a lot to the show, but in this case, it detracted from what was already a pretty sparse show for entertainment value. The group tried to tackle some controversial topics like the Sydney siege or Phil Hughes' death, but to successfully do that, and that's okay to tackle that controversy, and be irreverent, but to do that you need to be funny, and they just weren't funny. There were only a few highlights. One was, like I said, it was $5 rush tick, so didn't really lose much. Another highlight was that the show was only 40 minutes long, so, that was probably one of my favourite parts of it. There was a brief moment, actually, I'd tell a lie, there was a brief moment where one of the performers began parodying the moral panic techniques of current affairs style journalism. Now, that had a little inkling of something good, but it was really short-lived. Unfortunately, they went back to their just really unfunny performance. There's a problem with the show when the most interesting part of it is that they almost read out a cricket score. They didn't actually read the full score out, but they almost did, and that actually got me more interested than most of the performance. Look, I'd really like to recommend this show, because news parody is a great genre. We've seen a couple of TV shows do it very well in the last few years, but this I can't recommend it. Don't waste your time or money seeing the show. If you happen to be around the Pleasure Garden for the next 3 days at 5:30 in the afternoon, don't go to this show.